Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Welcome back to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with me, Karl Fitzpatrick. Well, the prestigious Sutherland School of Law in UCD has developed a global reputation as a leading provider of law programmes, and with Brexit looming, is set to become the largest common law school of law in Europe from January. The Dean of Law for UCD is Professor Imelda Maher, and Imelda joins me now on the phone to discuss the Sutherland School of Law. Imelda, you hold the position of Dean of Law with UCD, but perhaps you might start by telling us about your own connections with the South East.
Well, I'm from Waterford. Both my parents are from Kilkenny, and I grew up in Waterford till I was 18. I went to the St. John of God's primary school on Passage Road and then to the Ursuline. And then when I finished up in the Ursuline, I went off to Dublin to study law in UCD.
And Imelda, that was the very start of an exciting career in law, which has literally led you all over the world.
I got a scholarship to go and study at Temple University in Philadelphia, which was just amazing to get that, to have that confidence, an institution to have that confidence in you, to let you, to invest in you literally, to undertake some studies. So I was very grateful for that. And it's definitely a mind-broadening experience, I think, to go away. I came back and did the King's Inns then, and then I was, again, lucky. I had a one-year lectureship in UCD, and in that time I met somebody, a former alumnus who had a job at Warwick and said they were going to be advertising. So I said, well, she said, why don't you apply? And I did, and I got the job. And I had enjoyed my year working as an academic, so I thought, well, I'd keep going. There weren't any opportunities. It was the late 80s. There weren't opportunities in Ireland. So there wasn't much choice, really, in a way. I had to go away. So that started that journey, and I went to Australia on a secondment when I was working at LSE for 2 years and lived in Canberra, came back to London and then came back to Ireland.
The world of law, it's forever changing, and one change that has come through very recently is that solicitors can be appointed as senior counsels now for the first time in Ireland. Is this a decision that will be broadly welcomed?
Probably depends who you talk to. I think an opportunity to acknowledge and honour excellence wherever you find it is to be welcomed. And I think it will be interesting to see what happens. I think the first round of solicitors have just been appointed. So whether or not they assume practice in court, I don't know. Whether they'll treat it as a strictly honorary position, I'm not sure. But it will be interesting. There are changes coming through in the professions because of the changing regulatory environment that has happened. So I don't think people are surprised to see this, because it's part of the broader trend that has emerged since the LSRA was enacted a few years ago.
And Imelda, you hold the position of Dean of Law in UCD's prestigious Sutherland School of Law. But what does this role entail?
Well, the Dean, you assume the position for a few years, fortunately, because it's quite a demanding role. And you come in and you have an internal role, which is, I suppose it's a bit like being a school principal. You're responsible for your unit. In my case, it's the law school. I'm responsible for all the programs, the 1,200 students we have, the 55 staff, and the budget, of course, and any HR issues. And you try and keep the show on the road as best you can, working within the broader context of the university. So you are also responsible for the relationship between the school and the university. And the third aspect then is you're responsible for the relationship between the school and our all-important alumni, who we like to celebrate and stay in touch with, and other stakeholders, potential employers, law firms, the bar, and professional bodies as well.
And did your international experience provide you with any ideas that you wanted to implement in UCD's law programmes?
I think it helps just to see how other places work, but you always have to be sensitive to the particular environment in which you find yourself. I think the valuable thing you bring with you when you've been somewhere else is that you bring an international network with you. And that's fantastic if you're looking for people to do things that you might have people to call on, or if you want advice. Like the way Irish universities work under the regulatory regime we operate under, every 7 years, every unit is reviewed, and they bring in a team of experts, some of whom come from overseas. So you have the benefit of their wisdom and expertise and their insights on the way you operate every so often, and that's very valuable as well.
Now, the Sutherland School of Law has an excellent global reputation, but overall, how do you think Irish law programmes compare to our European counterparts?
And I think in law that's a really interesting question because, of course, we're a common law system. And after Brexit, whatever happens on December 31st, UCD Law School will be the largest common law school in the EU.
Wow.
Yeah, no pressure. So we, as a common law school, our comparators would tend to be other common law schools rather than the continental law schools who operate within a civil law system. Though some of them are increasingly beginning to teach through English in response to, I suppose, recruitment of international students, especially at the graduate level. So in comparison, I think we compare well. I think the challenge for any law school operating in a small jurisdiction, and Ireland would be deemed a small jurisdiction, is in our teaching and in our research, we have to play two instruments at the same time, if you like, or look two ways. So we have to look within the jurisdiction. We have a very strong obligation to the jurisdiction we operate in to reflect on and to write about the law here. That's really important. But, there wouldn't be that many contract lawyers or EU lawyers in the state because it's just small. So you also have to think about a bigger international audience and write to them as well and read what they're saying and how they're working. So in some ways it's much harder, I think, to work in a small jurisdiction and look two ways at the same time in order to develop your work and your thinking.
Another novel resource which UCD students can avail of during their programme is a simulated courtroom. Where did this concept derive from and how is it utilised? There's
been a long tradition of mooting. It's a very strong American tradition and it's been very common in the law school, both as it's now embedded in the programme. We're very lucky. We've James McDermott is one of my colleagues and he has really embraced the mooting. And when we were planning the new building, we moved in 2013, in the staff consultation, a number of staff had suggested, why don't we develop clinical legal education? Why don't we develop a room that can be used for mooting, being mock courts? So we have a wonderful suite of rooms that are designed to allow for arbitrations or for mock courts. And the students take a module where they do that. Our Student Law Society participates in a lot of moot courts. We participate in an international negotiating competition as well. And best of all, we bring in school kids come and have their mooting experience in the courtroom as well, which is lovely. It's great for them.
And does the Sutherland School of Law attract many business people that would be interested in taking a law degree to benefit their own organisation?
Where the business people come in is typically to take our professional diplomas or to take our graduate master's programmes, some of which would not require a law degree, or you do a law diploma and then you can take the programme. We offer one in arbitration. Employment law would attract a lot of people from business world, public sector, trade union, and they run in the evenings.
And Imelda, apart from Brexit, looking ahead, do you see any emerging trends impacting the Irish legal system?
Well, I think the big one is Brexit, and I suppose partly because I work in EU law, I find it hard to think beyond that, because I think that will really shape our trade relationships. It'll have impact even on things like corporate governance. Well, COVID is having impacts on matters like that. I think questions of health law, medical law will be significant as well in the future, and just how Europe responds to the mega IT companies, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, Apple, will also have implications, I think, for how we do business here in Ireland. And of course, the tax issue, but that's a policy issue more than a law issue, how corporate tax is going to pan out in the next 5 to 10 years.
And of course, COVID-19 has caused major problems for universities right across the world in terms of how they deliver their programmes. So what impact is it going to have on UCD School of Law in this particular academic year?
The university has committed to bringing students back on campus and to provide a campus experience again. The students were surveyed and the overwhelming response is that they wanted face-to-face if possible. And of course, the critical question there is if possible. So I suppose our response has been to be flexible, that we will provide some face-to-face teaching constrained by the public health requirements of how many people you can have in the room. We will record everything, and then that students will be able to come and get some face-to-face contact. But if for whatever reason they can't, then things are available online as well.
And finally, Imelda, what are your goals and objectives for the Sutherland School of Law for the remainder of your term?
I think one of the issues is to try and contain the challenges of COVID within the next academic year so that we can return to, I think, it will be a new environment. I talk about things being familiar rather than being normal anymore, because I think our understanding of normality has been shifted by the last 6 months. So that we will, the creativity that has come to the fore around teaching, and when we had to go into automatic lockdown and go online in a very short period of time, that will be harnessed for more long-term purposes in the teaching environment. On the research side, that will continue to contribute to debates around Brexit in particular, but also we're very lucky to have a medical law specialist in the school these days who's working with people in medicine on questions of mutual interest. And that we will also, the way we contribute to international debates will change. Academics are fantastic for going to conferences, and you have to meet people, you have to share ideas to find out, to refine your own thinking and also find out what's going on. And I think the way that will happen will differ. I gave a plenary at a conference yesterday and it was online, for example. And part of the discussion afterwards was, online is great because you bring a lot more people can attend, a lot more people would hear what's going on. But there's sometimes you do need to meet.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Professor Imelda Maher, the Dean of Law with UCD, and I would like to thank Imelda for joining us on this morning's show.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast.